Hello, everyone, and welcome back for Two for Tuesday. I'm super excited for today's guest, Scott Opitz, who's the Chief Product and Technology Officer at ABBYY. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Marty, nice to be here with you.
So why don't we go ahead and jump right into it? I know you love process intelligence and you've been following the market and developing products in that space for quite a long time, but do you feel in the last 6 to 12 months we reached a pivotal point in the adoption of process intelligence tools?
Absolutely. And I think there's a number of factors that are driving this. I think, one big one is with all the fervor around automation for the last 10 years has certainly heightened awareness. I mean, companies, realized they didn't understand their processes, sufficiently, or at least in sufficient enough detail, right, to be able to go off and actually do the automation. And so a lot of those projects, at least the early ones, they would deliver them and then find out that they didn't really deliver on the full promise because they missed, variations in how the processes were executed. Some of them had unintended consequences. The joke was always, you make things faster, which if you're not careful means you just make your mistakes a lot faster in an automated way. And so I think that was a big driver and probably the most significant of the last 7-8 years, probably more so. The other thing was I also see another undercurrent that's outside of that automation technology or those automation initiatives, and I can see a parallel here where, as I think you and I are probably experienced and old enough to remember, right? We saw the mass adoption, 20 years ago of BI tools that were really driven by business users in that time period because they were unhappy with the complexity and slowness of getting answers to their questions. And so they pushed forward with what was then called the new age data discovery tools, the clicks and the tableaus and spotfires and these guys. And what we see here is, I think, a parallel where the aggressive push to digitally transform business processes in this last decade and beyond has also exposed those same types of business leaders to the fact that they don't have the facts necessary to really understand the baseline operations of how their companies work, right? And so if you don't understand it, how do you formulate a plan, with insufficient data and even worse, maybe some flawed assumptions? So now that process mining and more generally, as we prefer to think of it, as process intelligence has become mainstream, right? It's been endorsed now by leading analyst firms and companies are recognizing, the essential role it can play of their overall strategy. It's causing, not only those companies to broaden their adoption, but frankly, it's causing some other companies to realize that they need to catch up quickly. So I think the next 2 to 3 years will show dramatic growth in this space.
Scott, you mentioned not delivering on the full promise initially. Can you touch on, do you think the approach to process intelligence has also changed the last 12 months from going for more kind of case management from single function departmental type approaches?
Yes, and it's interesting. It depends on where customers are in their journey, right? So we have some companies who have not really applied process mining, process intelligence at all yet, and so it's kind of a question, right? Should they focus more on those case management type processes, or should they focus more on the more sort of rigid, consistently executed, like we might think about around an accounts payable process or typical sort of back office finance type processes? So I don't think for those customers, I don't think there's a clear, yes or no answer as to which one they'll start with first or which one they'll be most excited. It's probably going to be the squeaky wheel in their operation of where they see the best opportunity. Now, historically, though, to the point of your question, I think organizations really didn't have a choice. The early technologies, what I think of as like the first generation process mining tools, they did tend to focus very much on the kind of rigid, more formally defined processes, right? Where, an exception was truly an exception, but otherwise they were fairly consistent. And they avoided more complex process types, these ad hoc case management type process types, simply because their tools couldn't handle them, right? So, with the rise of greater capabilities for analyzing unstructured ad hoc processes, those limits are removed, right? And so if I think about that, if I say, okay, in a company today, maybe where do they think they're going to find the most benefit? I would be more biased towards, what I see with them focusing on those more ad hoc type processes. And
Absolutely.
if, if you think about it, the reasoning is the majority of the processes executed by a business are unstructured more generally, right? They tend to be more free form, and it really doesn't matter what the industry is, right? I mean, you've got to, if you're doing new account onboarding, in organizations that now have strong GRC type requirements, right? Your KYC, identification of your customer, risk and compliance checks, financial analysis for creditworthiness, all of these things, right? They're all complex processes, and each customer might look a little different, even in something like insurance claims, right? I mean, the steps can vary greatly. I mean, you think about something you tend to think of as like should be pretty straightforward, right? An automobile accident, right? How complicated can that be, right? Well,
Right.
there's some fundamental questions, right? Was the claimant at fault, right? Or were they the party who, was hurt by the situation, right? How many other parties were involved? Was the other party insured, right? Because that kicks off a whole separate sort of process. If another party was insured and at fault, then what are the extra, subrogation process, right? Where the insurance company tries to get reimbursed by the other
Right.
insurance company because their party was at fault, or, any number of other variations of the type of damage that's being done. Is there going to be a field adjuster who's going to check on it, or does the customer? A lot of companies today offer the ability to submit pictures and video, right, of the damages, so that they can, in fact, and interesting uses of AI in some cases to assess the damage, right? Or do they take it to an approved auto body shop and they submit the paperwork or a quote that can be trusted? And finally, if the car can't be fixed, right, if it's totaled, then that kicks a whole other process off around salvage, right? So the insurance company can at least recover at salvage levels something for that. So, the point of this is, hey, any interaction you're going to have with a customer, a trading partner, or employees, they're very ad hoc in nature. And frankly, I believe offers some of the best opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Customer satisfaction is across the whole journey, not just a departmental journey, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Scott, I'd like to really thank you for joining us today on Two for Tuesday. And I'll also like to thank the audience for coming in and listening to us today. And if you'd like further information about process intelligence, please feel free to go to doculabs.com or abby.com as well. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Marty.